Written by Dr. Yaşam Ayavefe.
Cyber risk. Faced with many uncertainties that make it impossible to define the extent of cyber risk in a standard and clear manner, cyber risk is constantly between fiction and reality. Barriers to proper deciphering of the issues at hand and poor mobilization of cross-cutting expertise make these areas of expertise difficult to identify. In the vertigo of this reality, the boundary between fiction on cybercrime and the reality of the phenomenon is blurring. As a result, the news about every cybercrime case in the media has largely detached from the reality of the phenomenon. It promotes moral panics in quick succession. These media phenomena, privileged transmitters of a particular specialization, tend to create persistent framing problems, especially since there is a strong tendency in many media to use dramatic rhetorical and alarmist signals on the subject. The media focuses on the threat of cybercrime. It is important to note that this takeover of the debate by certain experts is also facilitated by the poor skills of most political decision makers with regard to new information technologies. This indifference to the issue allows pressure groups to put the issues on the agenda in their favor. This drift is indicative of changes in contemporary capitalism, where expertise can no longer be seen as a resource controlled solely by a professional community, but as a resource that feeds a market of skilled knowledge workers. In other words, cybersecurity therefore presents a range of threats at the service of experts of all kinds, lawyers, as well as writers, journalists, and experts with limited technical skills. The issue therefore remains largely in the domain of concern management professionals, emerging from the deconstruction of the boundary between internal and external information and the differentiation of internal and external security issues. Some cyber attacks fall into this category because internal security issues, temporary blocking of information systems, also have real geopolitical implications. These specializations in cyber risk are also characterized by the blurring of boundaries. Because cybercrime experts can do with concepts that present difficulties and problems, to say the least, in cyber terrorism and cyber warfare. The case of America is undoubtedly the most extreme in its ability to change and multiply the discourse on the threat of cybercrime, especially on security or geopolitical axes. More generally, we may finally be surprised that truly cross-cutting expertise in these matters is not applied more. The technical complexity of the challenges may be an explanation. But we can also assume that a truly cross-cutting approach would call into question the sustainability of certain networks of expertise. At this point, approaches in terms of expertise may be encouraging for a better understanding of these power relations. Domain-by-domain analysis has the advantage of highlighting relationships and somehow identifying important boundaries of networks. It makes it possible to avoid certain forms of individualistic illusions and to reduce, for example, the analysis of networks to the analysis of multiple individual trajectories or even to having address books. What is important in the approach is to emphasize the objective relations with other positions, the distinctive gaps between these positions and the interest of the agents in playing the same game. However, even if the problem is poorly defined and framed, it remains real and is undoubtedly growing. As a result, interventions in terms of expertise are required. Developing expertise. Developing expertise should at least be considered in an environment where utopian or very radical expertise will later become unstable. It will be necessary to learn to think about and manage the tensions between a physical world and a virtual one, as well as new relationships with leading internet companies and developing countries, which are often the source of counterfeit products. A good approach should, above all, avoid overly simplistic solutions that reject an understanding of the physical world over the virtual world. The two environments are particularly linked. It is important to have a holistic view of the challenges that integrate internet risk with other types of flows, financial or logistical, and are often not included in public discussions. Therefore, organizations that are victims of cybercrime related to illegal trafficking need both foresight and adaptability in the face of these new challenges. At the same time, it is appropriate to prepare for crisis situations. The creation of new forums and forms of expertise is also necessary. The prospect should go through as much upward convergence as possible from emerging risks between industrial and internet players. In terms of compliance, these companies should not simply hide behind legal tools related to intellectual property, and monitoring tools should be developed, especially when new products are released.
Written by Dr. Yaşam Ayavefe.